Here I've got the Moog Spectravox, and this is so much more than just a vocoder. Because we've got two 10-band filter banks with control of the individual bands and the ability to shift them, we can use it like I am here as a standard low-pass filter. Or like this, we can use it as a resonant high-pass, and here I've got a little LFO on the cutoff. So it's like we've got a super flexible MoogerFooger MF101 filter. Because we can also use it as a bandpass or a notch. And on top of that, it can sound like a vintage phaser or comb filter. Here I'm playing a Rhodes plugin through it to get some classic sounding keys. And this also has a healthy dose of MoogerFooger 104 delay on top as well. And then we could emulate something like the MuRF, which is the MoogerFooger that has an 8-band filter bank and a sequencer on board to give some lovely modulation through the filter bands, because using the VCA inputs we can modulate each of the filter bands independently. And because it has its own oscillator for the vocoder, we can create a vintage drum machine, again controlling each band separately, and use the noise generator on the highest bands for some snares and hi-hat sounds. And if that's not enough, we can use it as a single voice synth or as an extra voice for another synth. It's got a gorgeous sawtooth and pulse with PWM if you patch in the onboard LFO, and of course we can use the low pass, the high pass, band pass, notch and everything else on it. I'll start off by taking a look at it as a filter and all the different filter modes we can get from it, because that then leads on to everything else you can do with it. We've got our 8 bands there, so 8 thin bands, plus we've got a low pass and a high pass. And if we look at this EQ curve analyzer, we can see those 8 bands. If I add in the low pass, there we go, and add in the high pass. And these are really pointy because they've got the resonance up so you can see them, but I'll just show you as I modulate through the spectrum. Well, we can see them all bobbing up and down. That's where the resonance is peaking and stuff. But basically, this is what we're doing when we're playing with this spectral shift knob. And this will all make sense in a minute. But if we turn all these down, get nothing. And then if we add the low pass, just turn the resonance down, we've basically just got a low pass filter. So turn the spectrum up. So that's basically your cutoff knob, and then resonance. I'll play in a second. It'll make sense. But high pass in, and then this is a high pass. If we wanted a band pass, we just bring in a couple of the middle frequencies, really. There we go. Band pass. Wanted the notch. We had the low pass and the high pass, and then a few of the frequencies next to it. It's not a perfect notch, but when you listen to it, it sounds pretty notchy. There's a notch with an extra little dent in it there, but basically, that's how we do it, and then we can just listen to really individual frequencies on their own. When we listen to the individual frequencies, as we saw in the intro there, that's where you could have your kick drum down here. Let's turn the resonance up so we can see. So the kick drum down there, and you could have a hi-hat there, snare there, and some toms on 5 and 6. To use this as an external filter bank or filter, then it's really simple. I've just got the audio signal coming into the carrier input. If you've got nothing coming into there, you hear the VCO or the noise. But we're listening to a Rhodes coming from Logic, and I'm using this as the output. You can use the output at the back there, but with just the low pass turned up, as we've just seen, we get a low pass, add some resonance, maybe add some modulation from this LFO. Simple. For a high pass, turn this down, turn that up. For a notch, we would add some lower frequencies and higher frequencies, but leave some out in the middle. Got to keep an eye on levels coming out of Logic, but lovely. And if you want a band pass, we can have just a really skinny little band pass coming from any of the bands. Or add a few more for a wider band. And that's it. Really, really simple. So I've used the LFO there. To do more of that sort of MoogerFooger MF101 style thing, we've got an envelope follower there. That's for the program envelope, so we've got nothing coming into the program yet. We could plug this in to there and then bring the program out back into the carrier and then use the program out from there as the envelope follower. But I found you don't get enough volume. What I've been doing is using this. So this is the same signal, left and right basically from Logic, but by putting one into the program input here, I can change the level of that and use that just as a CV. So if I bring this program envelope out here, put that into the shift inputs, that's this. This will be modulated by the volume of what's coming in here. Just turn that down. You can see that's red as that's a distorted audio signal, but it works as a CV. And as I say, if you've got it at sensible audio levels, I found you don't quite have as much CV as you'd like for this. But you get a real nice little quack. Add a little bit more gain on that, so we get a bit more control of this. Bit too much perhaps there, but yeah, you get the idea. That's really handy, and that's it really. To use it as an external filter, it's really that simple. For those phaser type effects then, we'll turn up all the bands. So now we've got lots of bands poking up like we saw on that graph earlier. Let's take this off for now actually, so I don't confuse myself. So because we've got all those different bands poking up with the resonance and they're moving, that's what gives it that phaser type effect. It's not just like you're modulating a low pass, for example. If we don't modulate that and just listen to it, turn the resonance up. Comb filter. So it modulates through those frequencies differently than it would with other things. You can hear that sort of phasey noise, can't you? Turn the higher ones down a bit. You can use this like a tremolo as well, sending the LFO to the VCA level. It'd be nice if you could attenuate the amount of LFO, otherwise for me at least, it's a bit too much modulation. But I really like these sort of tones, got a really nice distinct vintage vibe to it. To use it as a synth then, I've got nothing going into the carrier in because we're going to use the onboard carrier, i.e. the VCO. I've got the volt per octave coming from the pitch output on the CV, on the Arturia, and that trigger is going into the trigger there, and this triggers the envelope. So let's just have it as a low pass filter for now. Let's turn it up. What we're doing, I'll turn the low pass up. Sawtooth. So pretty much as simple as you can get. Some resonance. Really simple little envelope there. All we've got is decay. But we've got a pulse as well. all the way around to a square. And then we can modulate that. For putting one of these cables, we should be able to see the modulation from the LFO. There we go. I don't know if it's getting picked up by the camera. We'll put that into the VCO PWM. And if you leave the VCA on hold and ignore the envelope, you can obviously use this as an extra voice for any other synth. All pretty standard stuff. Let's add some resonance. Some LFO. And actually, I should really show that the LFO goes into really audio rates, really. Would be interesting if this had a mult on it to see if that would track full per octave as well. I've not tried that. Here's another nice way of using it as a sound source. This isn't using the VCO, we're just listening to the filter, to the resonance of the filter. So in order to not listen to the VCO, we've got to just use the envelope to trigger the filter. So we're doing that using the envelope as the program input. But to trigger the envelope, we're using the Arturia. So when I hit this, we are triggering the filter. And then I'm modulating the pitch using the CV out from the Arturia key step into the shift in. So we're just listening to the filter now. And because the spacings of the filters is optimized for formants, they're not necessarily harmonically linked, which means we can get all sorts of nice metallic and interesting tones. Here I've got a little drum machine style patch then, and this is really simple to set up. We've just got the VCO playing constantly, turn all the bandwidths down, and then we plug in envelope controllers. I've got them from the Steppy from Intelligent and the Erica Synths black sequencer there. So I've got envelopes from the black sequencer and triggers from the Steppy, and these are now controlling the levels of these different bands, and the knobs here are effectively the volume controls for each of those. So if I play this, turn these down, so as I say, the envelopes for each of those sounds is being generated by the black sequencer. If let's turn them all down, and let's just listen to that kick style sound on channel 1 there. So I'm just changing the envelope on that. And you change the tuning on it using the Spectral shift. And that's it. The top ones here, 9 and 10, these are on hiss mode. So we're getting the noise through, which is how we're getting that sort of snare sound and the little hi-hat sound. Put these onto buzz, which is the oscillator. Just a different tone. And I've got the resonance up full. Turn that down. And of course you can control the spectral shift or whatever you want really through the inputs here. In fact, let's plug the key step in and have a little play with that. Pitch CV out into the volts per octave. Let's play it. Cool. And just to show you, if I unplug all these, all the way through that was playing a constant drone from the VCO and just modulating the levels with the sequencer, as I say, in the IntelliGel, and then turning the other bands down. That's it. Using a very similar setup to the drum machine, I'm going to try and emulate this. It's the MoogerFooger MIDI MuRF, and this is an 8-band filter bank that's also got patterns in it, so a little bit like an internal sequencer. So you play the different patterns and it runs through the different banks in different ways, which is what I'm doing down here. And I'm just using an input from Logic here. So this carrier it's actually the Model 80 from Softtube. It's got a little bit of modulation in there, but that's the basic tone. And I'm going to modulate these filter bands. So I'm going to take them all down to 0. Well, the ones that I'm not going to be using, I'm going to take to 0. So these are the bands we're going to be playing. So now they're being controlled by envelopes, by the black sequencer, again, just like the drum machine. So change the pattern, do what you want with it, really. Let's bring in a little trigger. So these are all envelopes. If you have a trigger, it's just a little blip, basically, but it's quite nice for a bit of rhythm. Going quite extreme there, we can bring through the original frequencies, or more of the unused frequencies, shall I say, to make it sound a bit more natural, perhaps. Go through the MoogerFooger delay there, and I'll turn that off so you can hear it without. Cool effect in it. Loads of fun to be had with that. Lots of people ask me where I get these cables from. These are from Analog Solutions in the UK. Really handy to see your triggers and what your envelopes are doing. Here's another nice little thing you can do with it in filter bank mode, and that's to take the input frequencies off something like a drum machine and then map them onto something like a pad. So I've got this. If I play this beat on top of it, nice. Maybe add a little click over the top. And that's using the noise for bands 9 and 10. That's without the noise. A little hiss maybe for some lo-fi vibes. And if you notice here, I'm mapping like low frequencies to the mid bands and high frequencies to the low bands and stuff like that, just to give it a little bit of variation rather than just mapping like for like, basically. Just showing it can be done, which is one of the beauties of having 2 filter banks in here. And actually, let's flick that into vocoder mode. If we take all these out, it should map it perfect. Well, I say perfectly, it should map it to the right frequencies. Let's try that. Now you can see why the vocoder mode has got that little noise in frequencies 9 and 10 to get those little sibilant sounds that you're not going to get through the standard bandpass. So nice little idea there, but you can hear that. It's a really nice way of showing how those little sibilant noises can be introduced with the noise. Cool. I guess satisfaction wouldn't be guaranteed unless I did show it as a vocoder. To put into vocoder mode, we flick these two on the left hand off. We put this on the bottom right onto vocoder. And we can have either hiss or buzz. Hiss pulls out the sibilances, because if I say something with the, well, I've just got an SM58 plugged in, I'd always recommend, if you could, having a compressor between your mic and the input. It just gives an easier time of all round, really. But let's just try it. So I'm saying scissors, and I don't think you can understand it without the hiss on. You're not really getting much S. Put the hiss on. So I'm overdoing it there, obviously, but that's why we have the hiss, so that you can pull out those little tones that you can't pull out the way a vocoder works. The way vocoders work, there's lots of history on the Moog site about it, but effectively it's pulling out the vowel sounds, and they did that originally back in the 30s in order to reduce the bandwidth required to send voices over the Atlantic. Anyway, they found the frequencies for all those formant tones, and then you just throw on the sibilances on top. I'll just put it onto filter bank mode. Turn the hiss on. And you can hear that it's actually got a real formant tone to it. And that's because of the way a vocoder works. You've got two sets of filter banks. I keep on saying we've got two in here. The first set analyzes what's going in, and they're at fixed frequencies, and those frequencies were discovered years ago. It's how your voice works. It's how the shape of your mouth and your throat work to get those frequencies. So it pulls out the value or the levels and the envelopes on those frequencies, and it applies them to the second filter bank, which is where you have your synthesizer or your drums or whatever you've got. So it takes out those vocal frequencies and matches them and patches them onto the second filter bank. And just to show you, I am modulating the pitch with the key step using the vocoder. So I can tune everything there. I'm using the onboard pulse. Let's try it on a saw. I'm using a really thin pulse there. There you go. It's a lot fatter like that, isn't it? Let's put it onto a sawtooth. So that's using the onboard VCO. We can use anything we like. If I bring in that VST again, so I can play some chords. It's not the clearest to understand this because it's only got 10 bands, so it's definitely in the vintage camp. The vintage ones only had 10. As time progressed, you got ones with 16 bands. They were thinner bands. Obviously, if you've got 20,000 bands, you're going to get a perfect recreation of the voice. But with only 10, you get less clarity than you do with 16. But that's exactly what, Clockwork Orange and all those sorts of original Superman and stuff used these old ones with 10. So it's of that ilk. Don't expect to get pristine, clear sounds. Don't expect to get Beastie Boys out of it, really. But that, I think, is all part of its charm. So I think that brings me to the end. I think I've looked at just about everything that I wanted to. And my final thoughts on this are that it's much, much, much more flexible than I thought it was going to be, actually. When it first came out, I was talking about the Moog vocoder, and if you went into the room in Super Booth, they had the little gooseneck mics, everyone was playing with them, but it's so much more than that. It really is 2 Moog filter banks, and the fact that you need 2 filter banks to make a vocoder makes sense, but you can do so much more with it, and the fact that you've got the VCA input or the envelope output, and you can swap and change those, you can use it as all sorts of different types of filters. It sounds like a phase of the cone filter, everything is showed in this video. I think it's a really, really good little thing. It's almost a shame it's called the Spectravox, because it takes away, I think, from it being a filter bank. Anyway, you know, if you were buying a couple of those vintage Moog filter banks, they'd set you back a fair few bob. So with all these extra bits and bobs in there, I think for the €600, it's definitely a decent product at a decent price. People have asked, you know, with the in-music purchase, does it feel any different? And I don't think it does. Other people have said, oh, the wood's different, but it's wood. It's always different. The buttons, the switches, I wouldn't really have known it wasn't, I say traditional Moog, but I wouldn't really have known if it wasn't all over the news that they've been bought by in-music. I wouldn't know there was any difference between this and any of my other little Moog boxes. There are a couple of things that would be nice on it. It would be nice to have portamento. It'd be nice to have some more VCA, so you could adjust the volume, for example, adjust the amount of LFO that you send into the pulse width, stuff like that. It'd be nice if you could adjust the amount of program envelope follower without having to duplicate the input into the top left, like I've been doing. But overall, a very positive experience. So I hope that was of some use to somebody somewhere. If it was, please do think about subscribing, or no, be more positive. Please subscribe, ring the bell, and join me over on Patreon. The channel is funded by YouTube ads, affiliate links, so do click on the affiliate links as well, and my wonderful patrons who, for the price of a dodgy coffee a month, get access to patches, samples, tutorials, and all sorts of other little goodies. Also, do take a look at my starskycar.com website. Again, there's patches, there's samples, there's free stuff, there's stuff you can buy. If you buy some of the cheaper stuff, again, I always say it does really help. So anyway, thanks for staying to the very end. I really hope that was of use to you, and I really hope I've sort of shown it in its best light, because this has been an adventure, really, hence all those different clips. I'll stick all those little clips at the end as well from the intro, just so that you can hear them without me talking over the top of them. So thanks very much, and I will see you next time.